Welcome to How to Cook That. I'm Anne Reardon.
Oh, who lives in a pineapple under the sea?
SpongeBob SquarePants!
Yes, this week it's a SpongeBob cake. And to start with, you need to make 2 trays of cake. I'm using my red velvet cake recipe, and I'll put a link in the description below to this week's blog post, which will have the recipe for the cake and the amounts of fondant that you need and the videos for all of those. You can use the chocolate cake or the sponge cake, and I'll link to all of those there. Once your cakes are completely cooled, you need to cut them in half and then cut each of the halves into 3 pieces, and do that with both of your cakes, and that will make all of the pieces we need for SpongeBob's body. Place some frosting onto a cake board and then a layer of cake. And I'm using a cream cheese frosting between the layers of this because it goes well with the red velvet. And that recipe video is also on my channel. On each layer of cake, I also like to brush a small amount of simple syrup. And this is just equal quantities of sugar and water. And instead of water here, I've used the leftover cherry syrup from the cherries that I used in the cake. And this just helps keep the cake really moist and really yummy. It doesn't make it soggy, it just makes it moist. And because this is a tall cake, it's going to need some support. So poke a cake pop stick into the cake until it hits the base, then trim it off at that level, so the level of the top of the cake, and then cut 3 more sticks to that same level. Then push them all back into the cake. Then add a cake board that's slightly smaller than the cake on top and continue to stack the cake. I get so many questions when I show you how to do this, going, how do you eat that? And when I get cardboard in my mouth. And as with any large cake, when you slice it up to eat it, you have to cut it into slices. So when you slice this one, you would cut down to the cardboard layer and cut those slices off the top. Then once you've finished that section, you remove the board and the supports, and then cut the next layer into slices. All tall cakes, wedding cakes, tiered cakes all have support like this. If you haven't been the person cutting it up, then you just probably haven't seen it before. It just stops the weight of the cake on top from squashing the layers at the bottom. Once you've stacked it all the way up to the top, hold your printout in front of the cake and trim around it. And I'll put a link to the SpongeBob picture in the size that I'm using on my website so that you can print it out in the same size. Next, cut chunks out of the side of the cake so that you have that rough, rounded sponge look to it. Then cover the whole thing in a layer of frosting. And I'm using American buttercream for this part because it's better under fondant than the cream cheese is. And to make this quicker, you can use a piping bag like I am here to pipe a layer over the cake and then just smooth that out with a spatula. And you want to completely cover the whole cake and then put it in the fridge for at least 30 minutes for it to firm up. While your cake is chilling, place some non-stick baking paper over the printout. Roll a ball of white and then cut it in half to give you 2 even pieces for your eyes. Roll each of those into a ball and put it on the template and round it out and squash it slightly using the palm of your hand. Round it out some more and keep doing that until you get it just the right size and nice and round. Do that with the other one as well. And then for his teeth, roll out some white and trim the fondant to the width of the teeth that you can see on your template there, but make them taller than you need to so that we can poke them in later on. Now we don't want them too big, so just cut it above where you want them on the same curve, just a little bit taller. For the iris of his eye, roll out some blue and then cut it into a circle. Now I always like to make 3. I know there are only 2 eyes, but I like to make 3 so then I can choose the best 2. Take some blue powdered colour and brush it around on 2 sides so that it leaves a lighter patch at the top and the bottom of the eye. Roll out a ball of black and squash it into the centre of the eyes for his pupil. Then next you want to take a tiny, tiny ball of white and add it just to the edge for that sparkle in his eyes. Squash it down using the end of a paintbrush, and you can see here the difference that little bit of white makes. The eye looks alive compared to the one without it. Put a tiny dab of water onto the eyeball and add the coloured part, gently pushing it into place. Now, if you follow me on social media, then you'll know already that How to Cook That has been chosen as a nominee in the 2014 Taste Awards in 2 different categories. And I'd love it if you could vote, because this is decided purely by the public, so by you. I'll put a link below so that you can find that, because it's a bit hard to find the voting form on there. You'll need to scroll down to categories 5 and 12, which is Best Home Chef in a Series and Best Instructional Web Series. Thank you so much, guys, for helping me out with that. You're awesome. Next, roll out some black fondant and using a pizza cutter, cut thin strips and place your printout underneath and trim them to make the right length for those eyelashes. They're very big eyelashes. Then do the same thing with his belt. Don't forget to make more belt bits. You don't just need them on the front, you need them for the back and for the side of SpongeBob too. Now let's make his arms and his legs. Now I'm adding some Tylose powder to this yellow fondant, and what Tylose powder does is it just makes the fondant dry out faster. And what you do is you just add some of the powder and massage it through until it's well combined. Roll out one arm, leaving it fat at one end. Now if you don't have Tylose powder, you can just make these details a couple of days ahead and just let them dry out that way. But if you want to do it all on the one day, you're going to need the Tylose powder to get these to dry out that fast. Squash up the fat end a bit more and then flatten it out, and this will be his hand. Make 3 cuts. Yes, he only has 4 fingers. Then separate the fingers and smooth them around. And his fingers are a bit fatter at the end, a bit like a gecko, but not so flat. And so just use your fingers to separate them each one and smooth it round there. Now if you put your hand flat on the bench, you'll see your thumb sits out to one side away from the fingers. So just arrange his hands like that. Now make sure when you do that, that the other hand, the thumb, goes on the opposite side. I've made 2 right hands today, they're not quite right. Now we want that to set with the wrist up at an angle, because he's going to be putting his hands down beside him, and the easiest way to do that is to lie the arm down flat and prop up the hand by just leaning that baking paper against a wall. Now for his little legs. Roll out some white and some yellow and then cut off the end of each to make it straight and join them together. Roll it a little bit more using your fingers just to smooth out that join, and then trim it to the right length and repeat that for the other leg. Now I've added Tylose powder to this little bit of white as well. Roll a super skinny snake of blue, and I mean tiny, place it next to the leg and then roll the leg over all the way around until it joins up the other end of the blue. Trim it off and repeat that with the other leg, and then add the red in just the same way and leave those legs to one side to harden. To make his shoes, roll out some grey and cut rectangles in the size of the sole of the shoe. Trim off each corner to round it, and then cut a chunk out of the side at one end so that you're defining where the heel of the shoe is. Roll out some more grey and cut out a square, and cut 2 corners off and round out that side, and then add that on for the heel of his shoe. Next, take some black and roll it into a ball, and then use your little finger, just press slightly in the middle and roll it there to make a weird jelly bean sort of a shape, just like this. Add that to the sole and then use your finger to pull down the sides to join it to the base. Take the smooth end of a paintbrush and make a hole a bit larger than the width of his leg in the shoe. Now make sure this is big enough, because we're going to add the leg into the shoe later and we don't want it to be too small. Now for his nose, roll out some fondant, making it round and fatter at one end, and then add a piece of spaghetti into the middle. And this spaghetti is just going to give us the support that it needs so that when it sticks out of the cake, it's not just going to sag down or break off. Place that into a cup and leave it to dry. Now back to our cake. Roll out some brown fondant so that it is long enough to wrap the whole way around the body. Trim it to make it straight on one edge, and then trim it bigger than we want it to be. You can see the brown is very skinny, but I want you to cut it right up to where the white goes rather than just where the brown goes, and we'll just overlap it. Wrap it around the base of the cake and squeeze it together at the back, and then just trim that off with scissors and smooth it with your finger. Now because he has square pants, we want to make the corners at the base look sharp. So use your fingers just to bring it together and pinch it in so that you get that nice straight line, and do that on each of your corners. Wrap your white around in exactly the same way, pushing it together at the back and trimming it off. And then you can see here it's not straight, that's okay, just get a knife or a ruler or anything with a straight edge and just push it up to get that bottom edge in a nice straight line. Now add the yellow over the top, smooth it out using your hand on the front of the cake and the back of the cake, and then on the sides bring it together, pinch it in and trim off the excess with the scissors. Then use your finger to smooth that join all the way down. Hold the printout up against your cake so you can see roughly where you need to cut the wavy line. And then just using your knife, just cut up and down across the front there. Don't push too hard. We don't want to cut through the white and the brown fondant. We just want to cut the yellow. So just gently cut it and then pull away the yellow until it just comes off. Then use your fingers to push around the bumps on the side of the cake and the top of the cake just to make those little bumps more defined. Then use your printout again to mark where the middle of his mouth is and each corner of his mouth. And then use a knife to cut out his smile. Lift the fondant of his top lip just forward that little bit and poke his teeth into place, making sure they're straight. Next, take something rounded. If you don't have one of these round cake tools, you can just use a marble, that will be fine, and just rub it on the cake to make an indent where all those indents go on his body. And don't forget to do the sides and the back and the top as well. We also want to make big indents where his eyes go. They don't need to be deep, they just need to be wide, so it gives us a little recess for putting those eyeballs in. Add his eyes into place, and if while you're doing this and making room for his eyes the top lip just sags a bit there, then you're going to need to do some plastic surgery and just trim it with scissors to reshape it. You never knew you were a surgeon. Roll a ball of yellow and cut it into two and place it in place for his little rosy cheeks. Then using a food grade marker, add 3 little dots to each cheek. And if you don't have a marker, you could just use some red food colour on the tip of a skewer instead. Carefully add each of those eyelashes into place using a tiny bit of water to make it stick. Don't use too much or you're going to get black coming off the fondant there. Take some powdered food colour and brush a little into each hole just to define those and make them look deeper. I'm using a mixture of green and silver colour, and it's food grade colour obviously, and then just brush that in using a dry paintbrush. To make his tie, cut out the shape from red fondant and then roll out an extra little ball and trim off the top of the ball to make it straight. Add the belt strips into place on the front of the cake, then the tie and the top of the tie, and then add some white fondant for the collar to the front of him. Now take a strip of brown and wrap it around the top of his leg, and you can see how this leg is already fairly firm, and that's because we used the Tylos. Trim it at an angle and add that to the cake. Then lift his leg and place it into his little shoe. Wrap some white fondant around the top of his arm and then trim the top corners off and use your fingers so that you can round it around so it looks like the shoulder on a t-shirt. Then just lift that up very carefully and add it to the side of your cake, and repeat that with his other arm. And then add his nose, poking it into the cake. Now in the SpongeBob movie, SpongeBob Out of Water, he is on the beach in some of the scenes, so if you want to make some sand, just crush up some biscuits or some cookies. If you use filled ones, you'll get like a wet sand effect. If you use unfilled ones, then it will be dry. Roll the rolling pin over it just to get rid of any lumps, and then pipe a strip of buttercream around the edge of the board, and the reason we do this is just to stop all the crumbs from falling off everywhere. Then add your crumbs all over the board and around SpongeBob, and if you want to, you can make a sandcastle by pushing some of those crumbs into a medicine cup and then tipping it out just like you would if you were making a real sandcastle, and add that on one side. Now this cake is actually going to a charity auction which has the theme Dream Again, so I'm adding a mini version of the book from the movie with the words Dream Again written on it just to the front there. And this cake was requested by Rockaway Brown, Sid Lake Amago, Katie Saunders, Nicole Quint, Fiona Webber, Beck Littlewood, Ella McDermott, Nana Zuzo, Adria Luva, Nazira Siga, Reborn Lover, Susanna Bernatech, Sacrifice Mafoe, Waffles Gaming HD, Stardrop Sylvion, Galleria Indigo, Courtney Navallas, Caramel Delights, Yves Des Los Reyes, LSG Disliker, Jasmine Harris, Nellie Morling, Ursa Gomez, Miss Sexy 1569, Grace McLean, Loomtastic, Karen Sorpa Smith, Hot DIYs, Eric Harris, Kai Waikiri, Cami Williams, Arivia McCormick, Rebecca Rutt, Christians, Dodder Liso, and Slainstein. And heaps more. Put all of your requests in the comments below. Please do remember to vote for How to Cook That in the Taste Awards. Have a great week, and I'll see you on Friday.